Welcome in Line by Line. Today I host Ezra and Manuel. We are analyzing a song called I Saw Nicolas Cage by Heidecker. So this time song was chosen by Ezra. Why did you pick that song?
Well, I really loved Tim Heidecker had a whole album that this was on called In Glendale, I think. And really funny album, really interesting songs. But this song, like, even though it is funny, uh I found it affecting. I found it kind of moving, and it made me think about a lot of things. So I thought it would be good for Line by Line.
Excellent. Manuel, what did you think of the song?
Yeah, so I had no clue about this song, and so I listened to it, and I was pretty surprised. It's definitely unconventional, and yeah, I can see some ways to take this. I saw Nicolas Cage staring at me, staring at me. Must have thought I was somebody else, somebody else. I had rosy cheeks, sweaty palms, sweaty palms. I nodded, courteously. Then he broke his gaze, broke his gaze.
For one, we're setting the stage for the song. Um, I don't think we've mentioned where they are. But he saw Nicolas Cage, and Nicolas Cage looked at him. He was seen by Nicolas Cage. And then must have thought I was somebody else, so they don't know each other. Which is kind of interesting because Tim Heidecker, who recorded the song, he's like a famous guy. It's conceivable that Nicolas Cage can know who he is, but in the song, there's no connection, and I'm drawn to that how the rosy cheeks and sweaty palms, like just from being seen by Nicolas Cage, he's struck with this. He's flush. He's anxious. It's as if a god came down and stared at him. And then I'm noticing how he waits until Nicolas Cage breaks his gaze. So presumably he might stand there forever if Nicolas Cage kept staring at him. And it makes me think of if I saw Nicolas Cage. I feel like something happens when you see someone from media or someone famous, but I think it might have to do with the fact that they're famous from media, that it's a kind of surreal moment. It's like I've only seen you on a television, and now I'm sort of like in TV world. It's like my wife and I love the TV show Twin Peaks.
Oh,
And
me too.
we went on vacation to the places where they filmed Twin Peaks. So we stayed in the town where they filmed it, and then we would like go around and look for like places that were in the film. And so you'd be like walking around a corner in this town, and then there would be a thing that you're like, I've like that's from the show, and it would be a really surreal moment where it's like we're in the show for a second. Your brain doesn't quite accept what's happening, and yeah, it's what it makes me think of.
Feeling of greatness for a second, right? I get it.
So what's standing out to me is the word staring. Nicolas Cage was staring. So there's a spell upon him as well, and then the immediate reaction to being stared at is going to an explanation, right? And the explanation is denigrating himself, right? It's like, oh, like he can't be interested in me. He must see in me something else that I'm not. Like I don't have the value or something. I'm not worthy of being stared at by Nicolas Cage. And then rosy cheeks, sweaty palms. There's this being caught under a spell, right? Like there's a control given to Nicolas Cage to give me an identity of who I am. Like I'm no longer who I think I am, but who am I? Like what is this? And then it's interesting that he says I nodded courteously, right? So he's trying to make a connection in some sense, right? Like it's like, oh, this is my moment. Like let me participate in in this moment. And he nods, and then it's like, nope. Like, I'm no longer, like, it's the end. Like the gaze is broken. Like I'm no longer participating. So he gets rejected in that sense, right? Like he's not accepted in a way that he would value, and he's left in this, like, well, what just happened, right? Like it's not, I couldn't get the connection. So in some sense, like, it cannot have been me, right? Because if it would have been me, I would have gotten the connection, right? So now there's this mystery, like, what did he see and who did he see in hashtag stoicism?
Yeah, Plato's Gate. People who are kind of stars and they are seen as deities rather than people, in a sense. It's like a famous person is royalty, in a sense. And being noticed by the royalty is a sign of recognition. Usually, I don't know how it's coded, I don't know how it works. It's like being followed on Twitter by a famous person. So if a famous person follows you and you're like, oh my God, am I followed by a star? Did this person notice or recognize me? I remember I had a really bad day, but then Brian Cox, who is like semi-famous, he corrected my spelling mistakes. And he, instead of weird, I spelled like it meant wired. And he's like, well, it makes sense if you meant weird, but you wrote wired, so it's weird. And then so he made joke about me. I was like, oh my God, Brian Cox, I'm such a big fan of you. It's like, for me, it was mind blowing. Shout out Brian Cox, by the way, whoever knows him. And that thing made me forget about my day-to-day problems. And it is a strange mechanism for dopamine release when you're noticed by royalty. And, yeah.
That makes me think of how, like, I don't like, because you mentioned royalty, and so it makes me think of, like, how depending on how the society is structured, it's like there are these people who have much more agency than you might. So it's like if there's a group that kind of has very limited agency, and then there's these people who seem to have a great deal of agency, and like they do things, they do more, they have more choices or whatever, then it's almost like it's like we're a child to the parent or something. And it's like you there's a sense where when then they interact with you, it's like you're getting some of that agency, or you feel like taken care of or something. And like I wonder if that like plays into why it's like such a powerful effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the way I would describe it is you're participating in their glory, right? So there's this element where they they have attained something, right, that is higher than you, right? And so what Nodrik was talking about was there's this shock, right? So you're drawn out of your life, right? And you're like, I'm now part of this other thing, right? Like this transcendent thing, right? This thing that is higher, and then you have to reconceive of who you are, right? Like, because now you're in some sense sharing in their importance, right? And in some sense that sharing, right, or that looking at you, looking down at you, is allowing you to participate in that, right? Like the, you, they're attending to you, right? Like there's this where you inform what is happening up there effectively.
And I think there can be like an irony when this is celebrities, when it's like celebrity actors. This is something I've been thinking about for a while, about how we treat celebrities this way. And it's like as if they had greater responsibility to go with their agency or something. It's as if that they like, it's as if they kind of were that glory, but it's sort of like, but I mean, they're just an actor in a TV show, like, or in a movie, you know, like if you're ever on a movie set, it's not like glorious in the same way. So there's a little bit like of a disconnect. And I think there have even been famous people who seem to like reject that treatment. Like you're treated as if you're higher. And then it seems like there's some celebrities who like try to lower themselves back down. Like, no, treat me like I don't feel that way. So like treat me like who I am. So, you know, I think of like Marlon Brando or somebody who was like put on the top of the pedestal. And then he's like, I'm going to make myself disgusting. I'm going to like do bad acting on purpose. Like, I don't want this glory. And so, and I think that's some of the irony of the song because, you know, it's Nicolas Cage. It's not, you know, a king or the president or, you know.
But he's my favorite ghostwriter. So like it's like that person that I really like.
He's awesome, in my opinion.
He's awesome.
I
By the
love
way,
him.
so that I completely love Nicolas Cage. It would totally make me forget about all the tragedies.
So I think what you're talking about is they're like a vessel, right? Like so they're called stars, right? But in some sense they're allowing that to shine through them, right? Like that's what they're doing when they're acting or whatever. And it's like, yeah, like a president has more of that in themselves, right? But they're also letting the whole country shine through them, right? Like they're not doing all of this stuff themselves, right? You're just taking the lead in some sense and channeling this stuff. And so they're not it, right? Like the person is not what they're representing, but someone still has to do that represent.
Yeah, maybe it's like the celebrity can it can be like just more confusing because it's like if you are that president, then you understand that you're fulfilling this role. And so like if you met like a president or former president, it would seem odd if they were like not presidential to you at all. Like they were just like, man, can you believe this fucking bullshit? You'd be like, this is like, that's not right because you're not doing the role. But then I feel like, you know, if you're like this actor or whatever, you know, it's just a different type of, it's like you might not have really signed on to be a star. You might have gotten involved in that role without thinking about it. And then, you know, people are coming up to you. And there's just a lot of actors who reject that, who really hate the fame aspect of what they do. So, yeah, I think there's something to that where it's like, how much did you buy into the role and how official is the role? It's like we all know that the president is this role that you're supposed to fulfill. But, you know, what about when it's just like that movie had a big box office? Like now everybody thinks of you as this, like dignitary or something, and
Yeah.
you were just a guy yesterday type of thing.
Do you think that representing a star, like Nicolas Cage, he represents sort of dream for other people. So other people dream to achieve what he has achieved. That's why each time they are seen by a person who achieved what they always wanted to achieve, means so much to them.
Definitely.
So,
Yeah. It's like they're a symbol. It's like you've seen a symbol walking around and it looked at you. That's so powerful. And then, but I just think about how, like, being the symbol, if you're confused about it, like you might, it's like people say, don't meet your heroes. And I think that that's like the whole idea of that is that they don't embody the symbol when you actually meet them. And so it's this like big letdown.
they're like, oh my God, is that the guy who got famous?
Well, or maybe do meet your heroes, right? Like maybe you have to adjust what's in your head to
Yeah, sure.
reality.
Damn, that hits harder than you think. Okay. Ezra, you can read the next line.
I took all my stuff. I walked outside, called my wife, said I'd be late, got my car and drove on the highway. On the radio was Nicolas Cage, talking all about his new film. He had such a good time with David Gordon Green.
So yeah, like I'll take this one. So I took all my stuff and I walked outside. That's interesting because now, like why, like it's maybe gathering all of his identity or something and changing it. Like that's the association with it. And then he called his wife, said he'd be late. So there's this abandonment or at least distancing from his life. Getting the car, going on the highway. That's the start of a journey. And then on the radio was Nicolas Cage, right? So at this point, we're getting a second type of relationship, right? So he had this one relationship now, and now he has this new relationship, right? But the new relationship is in contrast to being stared at, and so there's this awkwardness, there's this new meaning, right? Because like you can hear Nicolas Cage on the radio all the time, but like you hear him on the radio when you just had this interaction, like it gives this whole new dimension, and then he's talking about this new film, right? So in some sense, Nicolas Cage has moved on, right? Like his attention is not towards him. Like there's no relationship. And then he had such a good time with David Gordon Green, in contrast to the time that he spent with him, right? So in some sense, he's been replaced by this more interesting thing. So it's pretty sad, especially since like what is all this stuff that he did with his own life? Like there seems to be some sort of exodus, like leaving of what he had.
Yeah. Who is David Gordon Green, by the way?
He's a film director.
Okay.
That would be like a pretty independent film director, not like a well-known name, fairly obscure. So it's like it's extra funny that it's this obscure director.
Yes.
That, he had a
No, right. Like
little movie.
I haven't heard of any movie directed by David Gordon Green. Yeah, I like Green and David. So, okay, yeah. So I like how the guy just called his wife and said like, I will be home late because Nicolas Cage looked at me. Like how easy it is to influence somebody else's life, in a sense. Unless it's not related, actually. Like he just knew he will be late because he was late already before Nicolas Cage looked at him. But right now he's late because of his work thing that took him a while. And Nicolas Cage is just that thing that had his attention drawn elsewhere. I do believe stars or this royalty thing, they are, I recently ran a term kayfabe. So they are this glittery, shiny thing that make you diverge your attention from your actual life, in a sense. And that's what I project onto the song. Nicolas Cage is this shiny, glittery thing that makes you forget about your problems. There is another reason why he is late, but he only talks about Nicolas Cage. And the idea that it repeated twice, I saw Nicolas Cage. I saw like he tries to affirm himself in what just happened. Like it's all in disbelief. Yeah. So that's what I project.
Yeah, I also think that those that he repeats these phrases, it like makes it more like a folk song. Like it makes it a more so like I guess I'm reading into it that like, is it that he feels like his life has become like more symbolic and more meaningful, and so it's like now he's singing about it like a folk song, because like this song doesn't have to be like that. But if it didn't have those repeats, if it wasn't staring at me, it's like it's like he's um yeah, that okay, so this is kind of a tangent, but it makes me think about how folk songs, so that makes me think of folk songs and the folk tradition and stuff, because it's a lot of repeating and call and answer and all that stuff. And it makes me think that about how like folk songs are this weird thing because they develop from people who aren't stars, like we don't know who wrote them, but then the song itself becomes like the icon, like it becomes the star, it becomes the thing that survives through time. So it's like this guy who's of the folk, he's not special. It's like this is his folk song about that thing, like the greatest like imagine that the guy actually wrote this as a folk song and that this song will be remembered, hundreds of years from now. They'll like be doing folk renditions of I Saw Nicolas Cage. Like I don't know why I'm thinking about that stuff, but it's just what's coming up for me.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So for me, it's interesting that these repeats, right? Like they extra highlight what's on the end of the sentence, right? So the sentence, I had rosy cheeks, sweaty palms, right? You could also say, I had sweaty palms and rosy cheeks, right? So there's this giving extra meaning and different meaning by the repetition, right? So David Gordon Green, right? Like, and then repeating the name, right? Is highlighting, oh, there's this person, and this person is a lot bigger, sort of.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Like and it I feel like we think about these things differently because I took all my stuff and walked outside. You might just be like, okay. But then when he says walked outside, there's a little bit more emphasis on leaving. And then that he's late, and then we're like, was he late? Maybe he was just late, but then it's like, well, maybe he's late because like he's out of time now. He's sort of not quite in his life because of the interaction, you know.
Right. And so when I took all my stuff, right, I thought he was taking it out of his house, right? Because I don't think my stuff as a thing that you have at the workplace. Like when I have my bag or whatever, like I take my bag. I don't take all my stuff. but then it gets snowed under in the walkie. Right? So that's interesting.
I thought he was fired, but he doesn't want to talk about it because he seen Nicolas Cage.
Oh, for me, I
It's
just like assume they were like at an airport or something, and
oh,
he's like
okay.
waiting for his bag, and he sees Nicolas Cage, and it's like, oh, he's looking at me, and then it's like maybe he's not even looking at you. Like, who knows what happened? And then he like gets his bag, you know.
Nicolas Cage was like, "Ah, hi," and he's like, that person looks familiar, and he just like stares with this blank look. And the guy had the world meant to him. By the way, that makes me think of an actual person who developed a musical pedal. And he was selling those pedals. And so he reached out to both Lex Friedman and Eric Weinstein. Shout out to both of you guys. And he said, guys, I will send you my magical pedal for regulating the electric guitar sound for free. Just give me addresses and stuff. And I remember the difference between Lex and Eric, how they both reacted to it. So Eric was, oh my God, a guy from Mexico just sent me this awesome pedal. Dude, I will try it, but all of my guitars are just simple guitars. And then Eric just like shared his strumming video. And I thought it was an excellent show of character, though. Both of them are good guys. Just Eric is so humane and so modest. It was magical to me because I know that guy. I know how much it meant to him, that pedal that he developed. He was talking about it on all the Discord servers that I know. And that thing, I was like, dude, they are just humans. Why are you so taken by that? Like, I don't have that appreciation for stars. I see them as humans as well. I don't see them as royalty. But he's seen stars as royalty who noticed him and his pedal. And that was so touching to me.
I think that's really interesting too. Like, or like, I find that dichotomy interesting between people who sort of take on the role, people who seem to realize that people look up to them and what effect that has, and then try to take care of that, versus people who like try to reject it. And I've seen a lot, you know, of both. I mean, I'm just like, I remember playing a show with a guy, or going to a show of this musician I knew, and my friend was like, you know, they never met, and he was like, hey, I saw you play years ago, you know, like I really liked your set, like you know, you've like changed your sound a lot, and like it's cool. And this musician was like we changed our sound? Like, you mean like we sound different? And it was like he just did not understand that interaction and the moment. It's just like he was thinking about his insecurities or whatever, but like, you know, like people
Dare
care.
you?
There was, yeah, like this love was like sent toward him, and it was not seen and not cared for, you know. So it died on the vine.
Yeah, so what I'm thinking of is we have this culture in the Netherlands where there's where a lot of child shows, right? Like there was art in theater, right, for children, and there was this participatory element, right, where people were called on stage and stuff like that. And I've done that a couple of times, right? So there's this tradition of this integration of being it being an experience, right, and participating in the experience and bringing it to the person, right? Because if someone gets called on stage, right, like in a sense, everybody gets called on stage, right? Because that could have been you, right? So there's this element where your understanding and your relationship just gets dragged out, right? It's like, in some sense, you're seen, right? Or maybe better yet, you're seeing yourself as being part or taking part. And I think that's a role of audience that maybe is forgotten, right? Where there's the partaking that is really important.
Yeah, you're correct. When we all become really famous, we should always remember about the little guy. Okay. The traffic thickened up. An accident ahead of me. 4 young children died when the car flipped over the bridge. No one knew them well. They weren't liked. They weren't liked. But I did shed a tear later in bed. I saw Nicolas Cage staring at me. Yeah, notice how there is no repeats at children and the actual accident. I think it has a special meaning. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's one of the only lines. Is it the only line that it doesn't repeat? Because it's too real, right? It's like it's too real. The accident, and it like breaks the. I also feel like there's something kind of the word jaunty tune. There's something like kind of like nice about this repeating. It's like a musical motif, and then it's like that's not there because it's too brutal. 4 young children.
The line before also doesn't repeat.
Right.
Traffic
Yeah.
ticking up, an accident ahead of me. But it's like, that's like a breaking of the frame, right? It's like, like
Yeah.
reality is still there. And it's like,
yeah, it wakes him out of his Nicolas Cage dream for a second.
Right, and then you see him kind of regress back in, right? So it's like, okay, like, boom, this thing in front of me, the traffic taking up, an accident, and it's like, oh my God, there's 4 children in the accident, and then he starts distancing. No one knew them well. Like, I shed a tear, but like, it's not even certain whether the tear was about the accident, right? Like, that's already fuzzy. And then yeah, like, you just back into Zen.
And when I first heard this song, like when he got to "They Weren't Liked," that's when I fell in love with the song. I just thought this is brilliant. And it's because I immediately thought that the idea is no one cares. 4 young people died. We don't know them. So who cares? You just move on. He might not ever even remember that this accident ever even happened. But he's going to be telling people that he saw Nicolas Cage for the rest of his life. And it was like, I just thought that line could not have like put that in a more sort of brutal way of like, they weren't liked. Like, not enough people liked them for us to care,
Yeah, they weren't the royalty. And likes is the current thing, as if he foretold what the value of a person. Oh, they weren't liked. I've seen some videos with new stars, kids who got famous of TikTok, and they're like, oh my God, my parents don't receive likes. And I was like, oh, is that the currency now? The value of a person is likes they receive, the view counts they receive. Is that actually? And when I thought of it further, it is what is happening right now. The value of a person is the amount of followers and likes. And the kids who died, how important are they for society? Are they like for K-pop? K-pop, like those
Yeah.
that Korean band?
The BTS.
Yeah, something like that. Like in Korea, ton of people died. Ton of people died. It was a massive tragedy in South Korea. They were celebrating Halloween or something, and then somebody told, there is a famous person in that bar. And all those people killed each other. It's actually happened. News, there was a famous person appearing in a bar, and people killed each other to see that person. But people who died, they weren't liked. Are they important? Are they stars? And like I noticed there were like 3 Polish people who died, and so Polish news named them. And like those people who died in that massive crowd death, and all they wanted to see those, I don't know, whoever was the star at the bar. That's how insane the world is right now at the moment.
So to me, I'm going back to identity, right? So first you have Nicolas Cage, and Nicolas Cage gives you rosy cheeks and sweaty palms, right? And then there's something that makes you late, right? And it's annoying and it's whatever, right? And it's like, oh, there's a traffic accident. Oh, that's such a nuisance, right? And then it's like 4 children. And then what's their identity? Well, they're a nuisance because they made me be late, right? And then it's like, well, but I should share this obligatory tier, right? Like I cannot have that relationship to it, so I like 1 tier, okay? Like 1 tier.
Yeah, and then or is the tier for Nicolas Cage? You know.
I actually thought it was for Nicolas Cage even.
Yeah, that's kind of how I
He
take it.
shared the happiness here of seeing Nicolas Cage. Nobody cares about 4 young kids who died because they weren't liked. And liked by liked, I mean famous, I guess. They probably were awesome kids, but like nobody cares because they did not possess the public persona.
Yeah, like I take that ending as like I find it so powerful. So I think I take it like he's shedding the tear, and I kind of and you like at first assume that it's for the children, and then with that reveal that the repeating I saw Nicolas Cage, I take it like he could be crying like I saw Nicolas Cage, like he told his wife about it, and like going into sleep at night, he's like, man, I saw Nicolas Cage today. Like that was really special. But then the idea that you would cry about that seems like, I don't know, like I almost take it like this is what people might do, that you would like cry about Nicolas Cage, but it sort of is about the children, but it's like this is how you redistribute your like feelings to not deal with reality. So it's like we love uh the famous people or the media world or whatever to like try to escape from this like the real reality that's happening, and that our feelings might get completely redistributed in bizarre ways, and I think about like how obsessed people can be with like like Swifties, like Taylor Swift fans and stuff. Like they like swarm on people on social media and stuff, and they can be like quite uh obsessed. And like what is that? And like I think about how it's like anyone in media becomes kind of a symbol to us. And then it's like we're trying to express things that we don't understand, that are like unresolved in our being through these symbols, but we don't really know what we're doing. So then you might like be actually obsessed and actually trying to talk to actual Keanu Reeves or trying to talk to actual Nicolas Cage, but you're not thinking about the fact that that's just a guy. Like he's seeing you and you're seeing the guy off TV, and he's just seeing some guy. Like he actually also has the same consciousness that you do. And like that's something I think about a lot, or that helps me break this spell. If I is that like is thinking about like, okay, so like, you know, Bob Dylan just like uses a public restroom and just like stares at the back of the door, and his experience is the back of the door, and he sings on stage, and his perception is seeing a microphone and seeing the audience. And it's like I've been on a stage. So it's this like, you know, I think there's a big difference between seeing somebody from the outside and all the like perceptual stuff we can have about them and the symbolic meaning we can have about them, and the like understanding that that's another person just like you.
Yeah. Bob Dylan is just another person. Next, line by line, we are analyzing a Bob Dylan song. I'm not even kidding. Ezra, did you know about it, or it's just like Bob Dylan just came up for you?
Oh no, just I'm always thinking about Bob Dylan stuff.
Bob Dylan, we love you.
What I see is you have the first line and the last line is the same, right? So if we treat them as similar events, right? So in the first line, he's getting enraptured or whatever by this look, right? And I'm just gonna go with my interpretation, right? Like he's in bed, and he's like reflecting about this car accident, right? And then he's like shedding a tear, and then he's seeing Nicolas Cage looking at him like, "What kind of idiot are you?" Right? Like he's being judged by this stare, and now this stare that was something good, right? Like that was something lifting up is now completely inverted, like judging him, like who are you? Like what is your life? Like why are you lying in bed having this crazy thought?
It's about the reality and facing the reality thing. It's like the things you keep repeating to yourself is the things you choose as to accept as reality. And the thing you just notice, oh my God, it's the things you don't want to believe and repeat for yourself. That's why I thought the last line was actually, I shed a tear for Nicolas Cage, in a sense.
I think to me, like this song represents like very well. It represents something I like that I think has been bothering me for a long time. And I think it's this concept that like our like obsession with entertainment and media like can, because it takes so much of our attention, it starts to feel more real than reality. And then I like go back to my life, and it's like I just like cook food and go to the bathroom, and like nothing explodes, and I've never like saved someone's life from like a burning building, and all these things that are like the regular diet of media. If like I'm watching films or like I'm playing, you know, I'm playing a video game and I do heroic, wonderful things, and I feel this connection with them, and then I shut it off and I'm just like alone in my apartment, and then I'm like, oh, I've done nothing with my life and I hate myself, and I just play the game again. So it's this thing that like media can be more real than life, but then I think it works in the reverse in an equally bad way, where sometimes we'll reverse it and we'll be like, well, you know, fuck famous people, fuck media. You know, what's really real is the real people like me sitting here, you know, with a beer or whatever. And there's like a misunderstanding of like, well, no, like these symbols have deep meaning to you. and there's stuff that you're connecting to in this media world that is important and real, and like maybe you should be more heroic in your actual life. It doesn't have to be a burning building, you know, but like maybe there are things you could do. But we have this, to me, we have like a horrible like neither nor, where it's like we don't get what we could from media and connect to it on a deep level, and we don't connect to our real lives on a deep level either. We just oscillate between the two, like, oh, I wish I was famous like that, and like, no, fuck those guys, like, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think you can look at the whole song as like, what are you attending to, right? Like he's taking a spotlight throughout the day and saying, this is a thing, this is a thing, this is a thing, this is a thing, right? And then you can say, well, how many of those things were Nicolas Cage, right? Or Nicolas Cage related? How many of these things were related to something important, right? So like he mentions his wife once, right? And only in the context of having an obligation to notify her, right? Like, so it's not even in a positive way, right? And then you have these children, right? And then these children are mentioned in how they're obstructing, right? Like, but they're also mentioned in a sense of like, on like, now I have to resolve my relationship to them, right? Like what does this mean to me? Like, and so yeah, like you can do that for yourself as well, right? Like how would I write my day in that song, right? Like in a similar song.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Ezra and Manuel, thank you for joining. People, please check out all the links below. Ezra has a YouTube channel. Manuel has a podcast. Give them a follow. Like, excellent content. And thank you. See you in the next line by line. Bye.
Do like face replacement AI all of us, so that we're all
Okay.
the whole time. I feel like that.
We should totally do the face replacement. I don't know what does the Zoom show you. For
I have
some
blackness.
reason. Oh, you have blackness. Oh my God. No.
It says
It's like
that you start
Nicolas Cage
green.
blacks us out. Are you there? Okay, that's it.